Welcome to Techtastic, where we navigate the intersection of technology and business, uncovering innovations that redefine our world.
Alex, it is wonderful to have you on. It's Techtastic. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
So I do want to know more about Relentless Venture Studio because I think what you are is interesting and necessary. But I also want to talk about the journey getting there. I've been a tech entrepreneur for 30 years, on again, off again. I also jumped off for a period of time and went and worked for very large companies, trying to show them how to be more like a startup, to bring back innovation. My first chance at that was Nike, where they brought me as the entrepreneur. And that's actually where I found my co-founder. He was the chief technology officer for Nike at the time. And there's a big difference between starting something new from the ground up, inventing it, and trying to fix something broken that's of a scale. And it's actually harder to see the things that are similar than it is to see the things that are different. The things that are similar are a desire, a hunger to improve, to capture more market, to be impactful in some way. But the things that are different are scarcity of your resources. Like as a startup, you've got basically you and whatever resources you can put to it. And when you're young and early, that's not much. And as you get older, you've got better relationships, you've got experience to draw from. Hopefully you've got a savings account that you can rely on, right? But that lack of hunger, that lack of necessity is why big companies have trouble actually innovating.
I agree with everything you just said. I'm writing a little book, very brief, but I deal with a lot of incubators, early stage companies, people coming to me saying, Alex, I'm either starting a business or considering starting a business. And how do I know, if I should or what my path should be? And the first chapter of my book is, you probably shouldn't be an entrepreneur. Here's why. So
if you can do anything else, do that.
Just read chapter one and throw the book away and just go get a job. And it really starts out with, if you have to ask that question, you probably shouldn't be. Yep. And to your point, with your experience, you either have it in your DNA, some fire in your belly, that fire, that hunger, that need, and you just have to go that path. Or if you don't feel that burning desire to do it, you probably shouldn't. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes people are, I think, misled, and it's not really the fault of incubators, but people want to be encouraging. But just because you love to cook food does not mean you should own a restaurant. And that is a very, very different skill set. And I met somebody actually at a local college here at Cal Poly, and she was a lovely young lady, very smart, very talented, who wanted to make furniture that reflected her interest in culture. And she was talking about building a furniture company. And I said, well, show me your artwork. So she shows me her furniture. I go, this is beautiful. Okay, so who's going to sell it? Who is going to inventory it? Who's going to make sure you have insurance on this? Who's going to hire people to help you scale? She goes, I don't think about any of that. And I said, well, that's the difference between, being a tradesman and starting a business.
Yes.
So my suggestion might be you go find an organization that has that infrastructure and you create a product line within that company and let them deal with all the stuff that you definitely don't want to do and don't know how to do. And so I think that's a huge distinguishing factor. The success of entrepreneurs is you got to have that fire in your belly, but you've got to adapt to the 90% of it that's just business muck and has very little to do with the magic, the thing that you're passionate about trying to fix. Unfortunately, there's a lot of administrative stuff involved in building and running a business.
Every time I went and worked for another company, something that I didn't found and start myself, I had trouble, a lot of trouble. I look and go, that was the wrong decision. Like in my head, I knew it was the wrong decision because partially I've been there 100 times already. I already know, there's dragons there, don't go that way or whatever. I was more comfortable betting on myself than betting on somebody else. And why would I not bet on myself? That thought process always got me back to the entrepreneurship and always got me going, there's a better way of doing this. There's a better solution here. I'm going to go do it myself because I don't trust anybody else to do it. And I don't know. I found every other entrepreneur I know and respect, they're broken in the same way. Whatever, you're going to do your thing. I trust myself. I'm going to go do it. And I'm going to build this thing because I can't imagine somebody else doing it right or the way that I want it done.
It is a common thread. It is a common characteristic. You can pick them out of a crowd, and it's a strength and a weakness. I mean, it is a quirky to want to do it, and it's for a lot of people, it's that anxiety and nervousness in your belly of the uncertainty. And I love the uncertainty.
Yes.
I've made it my mission in life for no 2 days of my life to look the same. And I remember sitting down one time years ago, I owned an IT company, and we were in the break room, and one of my lead techs sits down and he's making his lunch. He got a little brown bag, he's eating his lunch. And I said, hey buddy, where do you hope to be 10 years from now? And he says, Lord willing, Alex, doing the exact same thing I'm doing today. and I shuddered for a second. I thought, that sounds terrible. And then I realized that's great for a lot of people. And what he wants is that stability and that consistency. And he enjoyed his work. He put himself into his work, but his work didn't define him. And I think as an entrepreneur, they have the exercise they give you in grade school. If you had $1 billion, what would you do tomorrow? I do the same thing. And I love what I do. I'm in it for the deals. I'm in it for the people. I'm in it for the learning and the experience. My brain hurts every night. When I go to bed trying to learn AI and all these different things, and I'm constantly relearning and reinventing. To me, that makes life exciting. There's no other path for me. And so I think it's interesting when you build a community of entrepreneurs that share those characteristics, that it can be a lot of fun.
Sometimes we find each other in the weirdest places too. I spent some time at Wayfair, which is a great company. Neeraj and Steve are wonderful, the two founders. I love them dearly. And one of the other executives they brought into a very similar group to mine is now started his own company. It's an AI also. Like, it's really surprising, frankly. We were so alike. And we were sitting at Wayfair asking ourselves the same question, like, why are we doing this? Like, we know the problems that need to be solved. 90% of them in any big company are actually cultural problems, which are not solved by anybody but the founder. You're not going to change the culture of a 10,000 person company that's doing 24 billion a year in revenue by showing up as an executive and being like, hey, change the process and we're going to build this technology instead of that technology. It doesn't do a damn thing. It's going to come from those founders. And we both asked ourselves that at the same time, and then we went off and both founded companies, just a short while after that. I always knew I was going to go back to it. For me, it was a lifestyle problem in that you get to a point where you get paid a lot of money to go fix companies' problems when it comes to something like innovation and technology. And they will pay you a lot of money to go solve it for them. And if you're good at it, you realize the playbook. It's like, oh, here's the freaking playbook. They're going to ask me to do the same damn thing. So I'll bring in this integration partner and I'll subcontract out this work and we'll do this to pay down this problem. And then I'll be bored and I'll go look for the next one. It's hard to get out of that, though. It's a trap. It's a really rough trap to get out of because you get really comfortable with that big paycheck. There was a moment I woke up and went, no, I simply can't do this anymore. I have to go back to who I am. And who I am involves solving enormously hard problems with a team of people that I respect and care about, that are passionate about solving the same damn problem.
Love that. I love it. I've gone through a similar trap where I'll have an exit. I'll sell to a company, usually a larger company. You've got a transition services component. You get to know some of that team. And usually in there, they go, wow, you seem to be good at what you do. Why don't you come play a little longer with us? And you're like, oh, this is fun. And I always refer to it as like kid in a candy store. Like, these larger companies don't realize how good they've got it with these big customer bases, lots of resources, great reach. And as an entrepreneur, you go, wow, what can I do with this? Let me add it. And then you try to mobilize some action and you watch everything move just at the snail's pace. And it's frustrating. And so I did some of that. And I had to make a decision that I won't do work for hire. I will only work on projects I have an equity stake in. Good. And that was part of me forming my venture studio. You said exactly right. Solving big challenges with a team of people you trust. That's exactly what my venture studio is, Relentless Venture Studio. I pulled my A players from previous projects of the last 20 years and created a centralized team and said, all right, we're going to go hunt for stuff. And either companies to buy, companies want to build, people we want to partner with that we really like, but we have an equity piece in everything we do. And then let's go fix things. I know it's been a lot of fun going down that endeavor by having that centralized team that's gelled. What happened was before, I've had about 6 solid exits from when I was 18 to 40. And about every 3 years. And every time I sold a company, I had to start over.
Yep.
And so I got a check, and I had to move out of my office, I had to move my desk and my team, and I'd come up with a new idea. And the ideas were fine, but I had to build a new team and find a new office and start everything over. So I said, well, how do I build an organization that allows me to exist in perpetuity in my problem-solving, entrepreneurial ADD mode and be opportunistic in my projects, but without having to rebuild my infrastructure every 3 years? So that also was a function of building my venture studio, which has worked out pretty well.
The last company I had during the .com phase was a venture studio. It was called Techno Loft because we thought we were very clever. iPhone 65 would just come out with I'm Blue and was all over the radio. And we're like, oh, we'll be a loft that is technology and plays techno music.
Yeah.
And we did fairly well. We ended up having to close that one down when all the investment dried up in the world. And when you're a venture studio, you kind of rely on your clients having money.
Yeah.
So we folded that. Yeah, went off to another one, had a couple exits. I think I've had about the same number as you, but not every 3 years. I was never that systemic. It was usually like big one and then a couple fizzles and then big one and then a couple fizzles, almost like clockwork on that front. And it was largely because I didn't want to be the CEO. I very much avoided that role. And it was the requirement to be out front and selling all the time. I wanted to build and solve. I wanted to make the thing. I'm going to make the thing that solves the problem, right? And every time the fizzle would happen is when I wasn't in charge. And every time we'd have the pop, I was in a good spot where I had a lot more control over it. And I learned my lesson. It just took me like 6 tries to figure it out. Like, oh man, have to be a lot more involved in the day-to-day and making decisions, have to care about the selling. I mean, your job as an entrepreneur is 90% sales. So suck it up.
That is a tough lesson learned, man. I've done the same thing. And I learned that with my venture studio, where early on in my career, I was kind of obsessed with control. So I think I benefited from that. And then with my venture studio model, we're like, all right, I'm going to shift gears to become an advisor and a mentor. I'm going to share my strategy and share my resources and help a dozen companies who have their own respective founders or CEOs. And that was a challenge because I'm not a great teacher, apparently. And most entrepreneurs I met aren't. Like, it's like they're the Michael Jordans, right? Give me the ball, let me take a shot. And so trying to teach the other companies how to perform as CEOs, you kind of give them some guidance on planning and you give them some resources and watch out for these pitfalls because I've made these mistakes, and make some introductions to help accelerate some of their growth. But there's always that challenge of you're not the one driving the ship directly. And there are some challenges with that. That's definitely one of the hardest parts of the venture studio model and scaling that part.
One of my friends who started a company recently, they went through a venture studio and it was very, very good for him. He needed that structure, that support around him so that he didn't prematurely hire a bunch of people from his background that like, hey, I need a marketing guy. Well, you do eventually, you don't right now, like you're a little early on that. Things like that. It helped him out a lot because he had a lot more indoctrination into the large enterprise. He had been an entrepreneur in his past, kind of fell in the same trap I did, and then stayed there a lot longer than I did. It's fun to watch him come out the other side of that. He learned a lot and it really set him up for success. They're on a great path right now. And then I've got other friends that they would have been a disaster in a venture studio because that's what they are. They should be running a venture studio. They are the advisor you want. That they're a repeat serial entrepreneur that can go out and just, they know all the right people. They know what they need to do. They're going to go do their thing. And they would have been struggling in that space because it would have felt stifling to them. At least the ones that I've interacted with, they can be very stifling. But I'm really curious about yours because you do come from that repeat entrepreneur success playbook thing, and you have to now take a big step back from control over it, right? Like as you were saying. So how do you manage that within the studio? How do you have the right level of engagement? Because one of the problems I found with every entrepreneur I know is we have no idea how or when to ask for help.
That is a fundamental problem. And it starts with good planning and gaining consensus on that plan, right? So we've got a structure where we talk about the 3-year plan, the 1-year plan, setting quarterly objectives, all pretty academic, like dialing those things in. And a lot of these entrepreneurs haven't had any real formality to the plan. And all that does is it becomes a beacon on the hill to make sure we're all rowing in the same direction, right? So we set some benchmarks there, installing some KPIs, how are we measuring this and at what intervals, and developing a discipline to look at the numbers. And that's the other thing that's fundamental. I'm sure your experience there, like people don't look at their numbers, they don't look at their financials. Their financials are a mess. What KPIs are telling us we're on track? Tell me about lead generation. How well is it performing? How well are things converting? What's my lifetime value? What's my churn? All these guys, they're focused on the widget, taking widget to market, just throwing whatever money they've got out the wall, see what will stick. And we said, no, in order to grow systematically, we need to have these disciplines in place. So the first is the education of them just not knowing that these things either exist or that this is a principle that should be employed, how to put it in place. So that's where we start, is let's create some formality around where we're going to go. And what that does too, there's a great exercise on expectations. I had coffee with somebody the other day, just somebody who asked for some guidance. and brilliant young woman, PhD, starting a interesting little SaaS content site. And she's making $500,000 a month, something like that, just getting started, very early stage. And I said, tell me your goal for your business. And she says, well, probably to go public. And I went, okay.
Oops.
I said, you understand statistically what it's like to go from where you're at today to going public. And public is a means to an end.
Yes.
It's not the end. Yes, it sounds exciting entrepreneurially. Once you do it, the luster is gone. You realize it's kind of a horrific experience in a lot of ways. So
well, it's just a funding round. It's just
a funding round, right?
Yeah.
It's simply like a different structure in order to do certain things, but it's means to an end.
Yeah.
It is not the end. And so it just sounds exciting. And yeah, you can create a lot of what seems like paper wealth, but if you're the principal, you're not going to be able to spend it or move it or do anything with it. Like, it's very, very hard. Aside the fact that we have to get there. And so I said, do you have a lot of money in the bank? She said, no. I said, you have kids? Yes. So what would $3 million do to your world tomorrow? She said, oh, it would change my life. I said, so why don't we set that as the goal? This is your first business. Let's talk about a $3 million exit. Now, in your business, what do exit multiples look like? So we talked about exit multiples. We talked about what you would need to do to get there, and said, let's build a 3-year plan to get there. And it took this big world of entrepreneurs, this appetite bigger than your stomach, and made it all very real and very tactical. So that's kind of the first exercise I like to do with my portfolio companies is let's get on the same page and let's be real. We're very focused on execution, and so let's get to that milestone. When you're there, we can talk about what the next 3 years looks like, but at least we've established a milestone that's realistic. And so we start there. We come back to, well, what are our goals? How do we measure it? How do we stay on track? How do we hold ourselves accountable? So a lot of entrepreneurs, to your point, aren't good at being held accountable or holding themselves accountable. Very hard. Then you throw this remote work stuff in there and make it even harder for people to hold themselves accountable. So these were just some of the fundamentals that I think came in and helped just frame up what being a tech entrepreneur is. I had a few cases where becoming part of our venture studio and knowing my background and having done fairly well, where they were counting their money on the day we got engaged, and it was like, I'm gonna be a millionaire. Like, no, we got a long road to go, man. Eat that ramen and save that money because we're gonna need it. It's not gonna be, nothing's gonna be easy about this.
Yeah.
So setting the expectations is absolutely key, and then putting some disciplines in place to measure the path and make sure you're on the path is really important as well.
Anybody who thinks that this is a easy path towards becoming wealthy has never done it before.
Yeah. I saw some kids. We have a great entrepreneurial ecosystem here in San Luis Obispo, California, and the Center for Innovation Entrepreneurship, which is a collaboration between the college and the city. And a handful of us local business owners. Blake Irving, former CEO of GoDaddy, was one of the co-founders.
Nice.
Rick Stolmeyer of MindBody is one of the co-founders. Myself and a few others. And so, we're all graybeards that have done this for a while. And I see on Instagram a handful of kids there at 2 p.m, and they're throwing frisbees at the beach. # entrepreneur life.
Yeah.
I mean, oh no. I went and I wrote a comment. I said, never in my life did this ever mean entrepreneur life. We're gonna have a talk later.
Yeah.
And so like this is what you do when for a week after you've got the check, and then you get back to it and keep plugging along. But that's not the entrepreneur life that us graybeards know, man. It's not romantic. It's not pretty, but it is exciting. And so you have to have it in your belly to endure that pain.
I couldn't imagine doing anything else. We're getting short on time, and this has been a fascinating conversation. Alex, I want to give you a chance to say a last few words, like direct people towards where they can find out about your studio or your book or any of the myriad things that you do that are interesting and they'd be excited by.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, our company name is Relentless Venture Studio. The website is berelentless.com, berelentless.com. If somebody wanted to go on there and learn a little bit more about what we do, our portfolio companies, and if they submit on the form and ask for me, it'll get to me eventually. You can also hit me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so you can find me on there as well. My name is Alex Minicucci, so you can just search me on there, San Luis Obispo, and find me there. So yeah, I'm always happy to help aspiring entrepreneurs, give a little bit of advice if I can. We love to connect people with resources, especially where we're at in this part of the country. It's hard to get connection to the right people. So I'm all about trying to connect and create opportunities. So we do a lot of that. So if you've got something exciting, something interesting, I'm happy to chat, see if I can connect people with the right people. Or maybe we got a project that it ties into and we can do some business together. So I always love to meet interesting people that are doing cool stuff.
You just described why I do the podcast. Alex, It was lovely having you on. And that's a wrap for this episode of Techtastic. I want to thank you personally for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Until then, keep exploring and stay curious. Thank you for listening. If you are new here and enjoyed the content, please subscribe. It really helps us out. And if you are a regular listener, thanks so much for your continued support.
Overwhelmed by tech debt? Discover Vala AI, the solution to tech challenges with the simplicity of a click. No engineering background? No problem. Vala AI enables anyone to effortlessly tackle tech issues, freeing up your time from tech headaches. Make tech debt vanish with Vala AI, where your tech solutions are just a click away.